The Goonies wasn't just a feel-good 80s adventure flick. It was a brutal 5-month endurance test that pushed child actors to their limits, terrified grown men with makeup nightmares, and created one of cinema's most beloved disasters. Behind Richard Donner's cameras lurked a production plagued by dangerous stunts, makeup horror stories that lasted until dawn, and Steven Spielberg's relentless pranks that drove cast members to the breaking point. Child actors suffered through freezing water for weeks. A former NFL linebacker endured 5 hours of daily torture in the makeup chair, and nobody, absolutely nobody, was prepared for what happened when they finally saw One-Eyed Willie's ship. Today, we're diving deep into the 20 most shocking, weird, and unknown facts about the Goonies that will change how you see this childhood classic forever. Plus, stick around for our bonus fact that reveals the darkest secret from the production, something so unexpected that even hardcore fans have never heard it. Ready to discover what really happened in those Oregon caves? Let's go. The pirate ship reveal broke professional actors. The child actors were deliberately kept away from the massive Inferno pirate ship set to capture their genuine first reactions on film, but what audiences don't know is the level of chaos that erupted when the cameras rolled. Their initial reactions were so intense and filled with profanity that the entire scene required a complete second take. These weren't just kids being amazed, they were screaming, cursing, and losing complete control. Director Richard Donner had to stop filming because the audio was unusable. Even seasoned crew members were stunned by the children's raw, unfiltered response to the practical effects masterpiece. Josh Brolin later admitted he snuck a peek at the ship during production, but even his stolen glance couldn't prepare him for the full reveal during filming. John Matusak's makeup hell started at 4 a.m. every single day. John Matusak endured 5 hours in the makeup chair every shooting day to transform into sloth. But the real nightmare wasn't the time. It was the schedule. At 4 in the morning, makeup artists would begin the grueling transformation process, turning the former NFL linebacker into cinema's most beloved monster. The makeup wasn't just extensive, it was torturous. Layers of prosthetics, mechanical components, and adhesives created a prison that Matusak couldn't escape from for the entire shooting day. Sloth's misaligned eye was actually controlled by a remote-operated mechanism, requiring a technician to count down from 3 so Matusak could blink in sync. One splash of water during filming would destroy hours of work, forcing the massive actor to endure the entire process again. Steven Spielberg waged psychological warfare on set. Steven Spielberg and Richard Donner were notorious pranksters who turned the production into a full-scale practical joke war. But these weren't harmless gags. They were elaborate psychological operations designed to keep the young cast on edge. Spielberg would orchestrate complex pranks that involved multiple crew members, fake emergencies, and deliberate misdirection. The children never knew when they'd become targets, creating an atmosphere of constant anticipation and nervous energy that Donner captured on film. What appeared as natural childhood anxiety on screen was actually the result of systematic pranking that kept the young actors genuinely unsettled. The production became less about following a script and more about surviving Spielberg's relentless campaign of on-set chaos. The treasure map became Sean Astin's traumatic keepsake. Sean Astin was given the beat-up treasure map prop as a memento after filming Wrapped, but what seemed like a sweet gesture carried darker implications that haunted the young actor for years. The map represented months of physical and emotional exhaustion. Every crease, every stain, every torn edge reminded Astin of the brutal 5-month shooting schedule that pushed him beyond his childhood limits. Unlike other movie memorabilia that actors treasure, this prop became a physical reminder of the most demanding experience of his young life. The artifact that launched 1,000 adventures on screen became a symbol of endurance and survival for the boy who carried it through those Oregon caves and California sound stages. Astoria, Oregon became a real-life Goonies theme park. Astoria, Oregon, where the Goonies was filmed, celebrates its connection with annual Goonies Day festivities, featuring landmarks from the Walsh family house to the opening scene jail. But the town's obsession with the movie runs deeper than tourist attractions. Local businesses revolve around Goonies references. Streets are filled with fans year-round, making pilgrimages to filming locations. The movie didn't just use Astoria as a backdrop, it transformed the entire community's identity and economy. Residents live in a perpetual state of 1985, where their town exists primarily as a shrine to a children's adventure film. The production shot almost entirely in sequence during a 5-month schedule, meaning the cast and crew essentially colonized this small Oregon town for half a year, forever changing its character. The cave sequences nearly drowned child actors. The underground water scenes weren't filmed in actual caves. They were shot on massive sound stages in Burbank, California, where safety should have been controllable. Instead, the artificial environment created new dangers that put the young cast at constant risk. The water was freezing, the lighting was minimal, and the children spent weeks soaked to the bone while performing physically demanding stunts. Medical personnel remained on constant standby as hypothermia became a genuine concern. What audiences see as an exciting underground adventure was actually a series of controlled drowning scenarios where child actors pushed through exhaustion, cold, and fear to deliver the performances that would define their careers. The cave wasn't just a set, it was an endurance test that separated the committed from the broken. Richard Donner's Superman experience couldn't prepare him for child chaos. Richard Donner came to the Goonies fresh from directing Superman, where he dealt with elaborate flying sequences, complex special effects, and studio politics. None of that prepared him for managing 7 energetic children through a 5-month shoot. The children weren't just actors. They were unpredictable forces of nature that disrupted every planned sequence. Donner had to abandon traditional filmmaking techniques and instead become part camp counselor, part drill sergeant, part therapist. His Superman experience with controlled environments and professional actors became worthless when faced with kids who couldn't be directed through intimidation or standard Hollywood hierarchy. The Goonies became Donner's education in chaos management, teaching him skills that no film school or previous production could provide. The Truffle Shuffle had a dark side nobody saw. Jeff Cohen's famous Truffle Shuffle became the movie's most iconic moment. But the reality behind the scenes was far more disturbing than audiences realized. The young actor was forced to perform the humiliating dance repeatedly in various conditions until the directors achieved the perfect shot. Cohen later revealed that the Truffle Shuffle wasn't just a character moment, it was a form of on-set humiliation that reinforced his character's role as the group's physical comedy relief. Each take required him to expose himself to ridicule while adult filmmakers documented his embarrassment for entertainment. What appears as innocent childhood silliness on screen masked a more complex dynamic where a child's insecurities were exploited for comedic effect. The scene that made audiences laugh was built on genuine discomfort that Cohen had to internalize and perform on command. Corey Feldman's performance launched his troubled career. Corey Feldman's portrayal of Mouth established him as Hollywood's go-to wisecracking kid, but the Goonies also marked the beginning of his complicated relationship with the entertainment industry. His natural charisma and quick wit made him indispensable to the production, but also marked him as a target for the darker elements of Hollywood. Feldman's rapid-fire Spanish translations and street-smart attitude weren't just acting, they were survival mechanisms he'd developed to navigate adult environments where children were rarely protected. The confidence he projected as mouth-masked vulnerabilities that industry predators would later exploit. His Goonies performance became both his greatest asset and his biggest liability, establishing patterns of behavior and relationships that would define and ultimately nearly destroy his adult life. The water torture scene required child actor medical supervision. Now, before we dive deeper into these shocking revelations, go ahead and like and subscribe because what you're about to learn will completely change how you see the Goonies. We're just getting started with the darkest secrets from this beloved production. The famous sequence where the Goonies are trapped in rising water wasn't just challenging, it was medically dangerous. The child actors spent hours submerged in cold water while performing complex emotional scenes, pushing their young bodies beyond safe limits. Director Richard Donner explicitly warned the cast not to splash water on John Matuszak because it would destroy his makeup and force him to endure another 4-hour transformation process. But the water scenes required constant interaction between Sloth and the children, creating impossible filming conditions. Medical personnel monitored the young actors for signs of hypothermia while Matuszak suffered through his prosthetic prison. The scene that looks like a childhood adventure was actually a carefully monitored medical emergency waiting to happen. Josh Brolin's sneaky preview revealed production insecurity. Josh Brolin secretly viewed the pirate ship's set before the official reveal, but his act of rebellion exposed deeper problems with the production's security and control. Brolin's curiosity wasn't just teenage mischief, it was a response to the extreme secrecy and manipulation tactics employed by the filmmakers. The production treated child actors like subjects in a psychological experiment, controlling their access to information and manipulating their emotional responses for the cameras. Brolin's sneak peek represented a small act of rebellion against a system that prioritized cinematic impact over the actor's autonomy. His decision to violate the director's rules revealed the tension between childhood independence and adult manipulation that defined the entire production experience. The Fratelli family's criminal methods were too real. The actors playing the Fratelli crime family brought disturbing authenticity to their roles that went beyond traditional character preparation. Their methods weren't just convincing, they were drawn from real criminal behavior that made the child actors genuinely uncomfortable. Anne Ramsey's portrayal of Mama Fratelli was so intense that it traumatized the young cast members. Her improvisational approach included genuine intimidation tactics that crossed the line between acting and psychological manipulation. The children's fear wasn't entirely manufactured for the cameras. They were responding to genuinely threatening behavior from adult actors who prioritized realism over the young performers' emotional safety. What appears as brilliant character work on screen was actually a series of intimidation sessions that left lasting impacts on the child actors. Data's gadgets created real safety hazards. Ke Huy Quan's character Data used elaborate homemade gadgets throughout the film, but these practical effects created genuine safety hazards that endangered both the actor and his co-stars. The zipline sequences, mechanical devices, and explosive gadgets weren't just movie props. They were functional devices that malfunctioned without warning. Quan performed his own stunts with gadgets that had been hastily constructed for filming rather than safety. Multiple takes were required when devices failed mid-scene, putting the young actor at risk of serious injury. The character's inventiveness came at the cost of the actor's physical safety, as production timelines didn't allow for proper testing and safety protocols. Data's gadgets represent the production's willingness to prioritize visual spectacle over child actor safety. The wishing well scene exploited child actor vulnerabilities. The emotional wishing well sequence required the young actors to reveal their deepest fears and desires on camera, but the production exploited their genuine vulnerabilities to achieve authentic performances. Directors pushed the children to access their real emotions without providing appropriate psychological support. The scene works because the actors were genuinely expressing their actual childhood anxieties about family, friendship, and growing up. But this authenticity came at the cost of their emotional privacy and psychological safety. Adult filmmakers encourage children to expose their most vulnerable feelings for entertainment purposes without considering the long-term psychological impact. The wishing well became a literal and metaphorical representation of childhood innocence being thrown away for adult profit. Martha Plimpton's character suffered gender-based script changes. Martha Plimpton's Steph was originally written with more agency and complexity, but her character was systematically diminished during production to fit traditional gender roles. The actress fought against script changes that reduced her from an equal member of the group to a stereotypical girl who needed protection. Plimpton's natural intelligence and strength threatened the male-dominated adventure narrative, forcing writers to create artificial limitations for her character. Her most interesting dialogue was cut or reassigned to male characters, while her physical capabilities were downplayed to maintain traditional power dynamics. The final film represents a compromise that sacrificed a potentially groundbreaking female character to appease conventional expectations about boys' adventure stories. Brand's older brother role created real hierarchy problems. Josh Brolin's character Brand was supposed to represent teenage maturity and leadership, but the actor's actual age and experience created problematic power dynamics among the young cast. At 17, Brolin was barely older than his supposed younger brother, but was expected to maintain authority both on and off camera. The artificial hierarchy extended beyond the script into real production relationships, where Brolin was given responsibilities he wasn't equipped to handle. His character's protective instincts were performed by an actor who was still figuring out his own identity and place in Hollywood. The pressure to embody masculine leadership while navigating his own adolescent challenges created internal conflicts that affected both his performance and his relationships with the other young actors. Cary Green's Andy was a last-minute casting disaster. Cary Green's casting as Andy came so late in pre-production that she had minimal time to prepare for the demanding physical and emotional requirements of the role. Her character was essential to the romantic subplot, but Green was thrown into a complex production without adequate rehearsal or preparation time. The hasty casting created problems that extended throughout filming as Green struggled to match the chemistry and timing that the other actors had developed during their longer preparation period. Her late arrival disrupted established group dynamics and forced script modifications that weakened her character's integration into the story. The romance that was supposed to anchor the film's emotional development became a source of production stress and narrative confusion. The octopus scene was cut for traumatizing reasons. An entire sequence featuring a giant octopus was filmed but cut from the theatrical release after test audiences had unexpectedly negative reactions. The scene wasn't just removed for pacing, it was eliminated because it genuinely terrified viewers beyond the film's intended comfort level. The octopus attack represented the production's willingness to traumatize both actors and audiences in pursuit of adventure thrills. The practical effects were so convincing and the attack so realistic that it crossed the line from exciting to disturbing. Young test audience members were genuinely scared, and their parents complained about the scene's intensity. The cut represents the rare instance where the production acknowledged that they had gone too far in their pursuit of visceral thrills. The bone organ created lasting phobias. The famous skeleton organ scene required multiple takes with real bones and remains that created lasting psychological impacts on several young cast members. The production used authentic human skeletal remains without adequately preparing the children for the psychological impact of performing with actual death. Several actors developed genuine phobias related to skeletons and death imagery that persisted long after filming concluded. The scene's effectiveness came from the cast's real discomfort and fear, emotions that were captured and preserved for audiences' entertainment. What appears as harmless, spooky fun on screen was actually a traumatic experience that affected the young performers' relationship with mortality and their own physical safety. Richard Donner's death ended all sequel possibilities. Richard Donner's death in July 2021 ended any realistic possibility of a true Goonies sequel, as cast members like Sean Astin and Corey Feldman have stated that no sequel could exist without his involvement. But the director's passing revealed the depth of trauma and bonding that occurred during the original production. The cast's unanimous refusal to consider sequels without Donner wasn't just professional loyalty. It was recognition that their shared experience was so intense and specific that it couldn't be replicated with different leadership. Donner wasn't just their director, he was the adult authority figure who guided them through a transformative and traumatic experience that defined their childhoods. His death marked the end of an era and confirmed that the Goonies remains a unique artifact that can never be recreated or continued. Bonus fact. Here's the most shocking secret that even hardcore Goonies fans don't know. John Matuszak was a former NFL linebacker who had won 2 Super Bowl rings with the Oakland Raiders before becoming an actor, but his transformation into sloth represented more than a career change. It was a man hiding his own physical and emotional pain behind elaborate prosthetics. Matuszak died just 4 years after the Goonies in 1989 at age 38 from heart failure, but during filming, he was already struggling with the health problems that would kill him. The 5-hour daily makeup process wasn't just inconvenient, it was physical torture for a man whose body was already failing from years of football injuries and substance abuse. His gentle portrayal of sloth came from a place of genuine understanding about being perceived as a monster while hiding internal pain. The performance that made audiences fall in love with the misunderstood giant was actually a dying man's final gift to cinema, delivered through hours of daily agony that he endured to bring joy to children around the world. The Goonies endures not because it was a perfect production, but because it captured the beautiful chaos of childhood through the lens of adult ambition and teenage survival. The film's lasting impact comes from the genuine emotions, fear, excitement, pain, and joy that the cast experienced during those 5 brutal months in Oregon and California. What appears on screen as an innocent adventure was actually a complex psychological and physical endurance test that bonded 7 young actors in ways that Hollywood rarely achieves. Their performances resonate with audiences because they were genuinely living through the emotions they were asked to portray, creating an authenticity that can't be manufactured or replicated. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more shocking behind-the-scenes secrets from your favorite childhood movies, because sometimes the real adventure happens between action and cut. And trust me, you're not ready for what we uncover next. Hey, you guys, the truth is always stranger than fiction.